Hey students, Nate Scharff here. Wanted to give you some detail on where we're at in the class. So here we are, week 6. You're at 375 points. After this Sunday, when you turn in your cover letter and resume or LinkedIn and resume, we'll be at 435 points. So a little bit under halfway, 1,000 points total for the class. So we still have quite a bit of points left. And I want to highlight what is coming up for you over the remaining 2 weeks. That's right. After this Sunday, we only have 2 weeks left. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the analytical report assignment, because that's your big point value assignment, and it's kind of due next week. So let's go there. I'm sharing my screen with you all right now. How do I find out how to do this analytical report? Is there a sample analytical report that I can look at? Yes. Is there a sample works cited that I can look at? Yes. Can you tell me how to pick my schools and the criteria points? Yes, yes, yes. So that's all there. I'm looking at the Start Here module right now, and you'll see that there is a link to Major Assignments resource page. The analytical report and recorded presentation, all that is in there. So that's where you can go to get the resource pages. But for now, what I'm going to do is scroll down. Here we are in week 6. Next week, week 7, by August 2nd, that's Sunday, not this Sunday, but the following Sunday, your analytical report, your final report is due. So don't sweat it. I've given you lots of resources here. But what I'm going to do is click on that assignment, due next week, and walk you through some of the resources. So I know there's a lot. It's a little bit overwhelming when you read it all here, but the requirements tells you how many pages it has to be, 9 to 12. That sounds like a lot, but it's really not, because you got 3 schools and you're doing at least 4 criteria points, and you're going to use lots of graphs and charts. So it's going to fill up your pages real quickly. This will make sense when I show you the sample. Okay, so you're going to write in block format, meaning everything is single spaced, with a space between each paragraph. You're going to cite your sources, both in text. That means when you're sharing a bunch of text information that has facts and figures, history of the school, all that kind of data that came from a source, you need to cite that source. And also the graphs need to be sourced. You're going to use headings, I'm on that right here, which breaks up the sections of the report, basically like kind of an outline, so I know what section you're on of the report. Okay, so the main topic, you're reviewing 3 schools, making a recommendation as to which one is the best based on your criteria points for a master's degree. The default master's is a master's in business administration, since many of you are business students, but you can choose a different major, like a master's in fine arts or something else. All right, so that's all good. Let's go back to the assignment. Again, this is in the week 7. If you click on the assignment, you'll see it here. There's a rubric here. I'm zeroing in on it right now with the ripple effect. Refer to the sample report, and that is listed in here. So I'm going to go to that in a second. Let's go to the resource page for the analytical report. There's a lot here. Don't get overwhelmed. I'm trying to give you everything. We're working online. You're doing a lot of this by yourself, but I've spelled this out. What I'm going to spend time on is going through the analytical report sample right here. Okay. Now, there's also a works cited sample. If you didn't get your full points on the works cited that you turned in, you can look at the sample here. You're using the MLA citation method. That's Modern Language Association format. EasyBib is a online citation generator, super easy. You put in the URL website, it'll ask you a few prompts, and it'll generate the source for you, okay? The main way students lose points on the research paper is they don't cite sources. So this is a research paper, so it's imperative that you're citing your sources throughout the paper. No sources, you're going to get a 0 on the report. I'm not going to do one of those things where I'm like, that's plagiarism, you didn't cite your sources, and notify the dean. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to give you a 0, and you'll have to rewrite the report for partial credit. You don't want to do that. So let's look at the sample to know what we're doing, okay? So there's, again, in the analytical report resource page, which I'm zeroing in on right now, there is a sample, and I'm ripple effecting over it right now. All right, so I'm opening that one up. Obviously, you're going to have your own schools and your own research and your own information separate from the sample that I'm showing you now. This student chose to research a master's in financial planning. Many of you are doing a master's in business administration. All right, so we're looking at the start of the report. And as I skim through, you see there's a whole bunch of stuff. There's text, there's graphs, there's sourcing, there's even a final recommendation and a works cited. Wow, that looks like a lot. So you've already selected your schools, you've already selected your criteria points, and you've already done a first pass on your works cited. Let me give you detailed instructions on page by page what you're doing for the analytical report. Okay, so there's two main sections to a research paper. And this is an analytical report, so you're comparing three schools and making a recommendation. But there's two main sections. Your first section is called Preparatory. That is window dressing stuff that precedes the actual body count of the paper, of the report. So prefatory stuff includes a cover page like we see here. It includes also a table of contents like we see here. And it includes an executive summary like we see here. With business reports, the summary of the report findings goes up front. So that's called an executive summary, so that when you labored over a large 50, 60-page report with a detailed summary at the end, you put the summary up front so that the busy executive can kind of get the gist, the highlight of your report. So look at the samples of these. So these three components are your prefatory sections of the report. Cover page should look like this one. It does not have a page number on it anywhere, but it is the first page of your prefatory section of the report. Your second page of your prefatory section of the report is your table of contents. You see here we have a lowercase ii right here. Lowercase Roman numerals are how you number prefatory sections of a report. Okay, so far so good. And that table of contents just lists all the sections of the report, the headings of the report. So this is how the report will be constructed. It'll have an introduction section that you see here. It'll have an analysis by criteria section. It'll have a recommendation section and a works cited. All of these components that I'm highlighting now are part of your actual page count, your 1 through 9, your 9 to 12 page count. Okay. So these main sections, introduction, analysis by criteria, recommendation, and works cited, those are your main headings. So as you write your report, your main headings will always start on a new page. The other subsections, these are your subheadings, are little placeholders, kind of like all caps placeholders, headings in your report as you're writing, okay? But just remember that your main headings all start on a new page because it's a new section of the report. All right. So we have a cover page, we have a table of contents, we have an executive summary. The executive summary boils down your entire report into one quick page. It's going to explain what the purpose of the report is. It's going to say what the criteria points are. It's going to recap very quickly who won each of the criteria points. It's going to make a recommendation on who is the overall school that you're recommending as the best choice. That's all part of your executive summary. So make sure your executive summary has the purpose of the report, a quick overview of the criteria points, a recap of which school won each criteria point, and your actual recommendation. And that's preparatory page I, Roman numerals, right? I, and then I for 2, and then 3 I's for 3, and then I, V for 4, and then a V for 5. That's how Roman numerals work. Then the report shifts. You're done with your prefatory window dressing, and now you're moving into what we call the body of the report. What's in the body of the report? It's those main sections. Again, your 4 main sections of your report are introduction. What's next? Do you remember? Yes, you're correct. Analysis by criteria or criteria analysis, however you want to call it. That's your next main section. What's your next main section? We scroll down. It is your recommendation, and there it is. And then your last is your works cited. Boom. The works cited also counts towards your page count. So this student's report came in right at 9 pages. Okay, so that's your main sections. You see them again here on your table of contents. So my recommendation is that when you sit down to start writing this thing, you've got your research done, start with an outline of your main sections and then start moving along. So let's look at the subsets of those. The introduction section is setting the table so that the reader can have all the tools and understanding to start reading your report. You're going to tell them what's the purpose of the report. You're going to give them a brief overview of the criteria points that you selected. What's important with the criteria explanation is not just saying what your criteria is. My first criteria point is cost. You also want to say what data you're going to look at to determine who wins that criteria point and how a school wins that criteria point. For example, you might have a criteria point of culture. Culture of the school is kind of nebulous as a criteria point, but the way you would describe how a school would win culture is something like, for culture, I'm going to compare 2 driving factors. One is the ratios of diversity of the student population, and then my second driver is going to be the number of cross-cultural, diverse, LGBTQ, et cetera, clubs on campus. In the school with the combined highest student diversity ratios and highest number of diversity clubs will be the winner. So when you describe your criteria points, you also want to say, here's the data I'm going to be comparing for that criteria point, and it has to be something that you can compare. It can't be just subjective stuff. And then here's how one wins. For example, like here we see this student has a criteria point of desirability of attending. Now, what is that? I'm going to compare their yield rates, which means for what it costs to get the education versus what I got in postgraduate salary, who's got the highest yield. Caliber could be kind of unclear. So every school is going to have all kinds of information about here's awards we won and here's how cool we are as a school. But that's not really anything clear that the reader can look at for a clear comparison. So for your comparison, you need to have something data-driven, numbers, ideally. For this student, they're saying for the caliber criteria, I'm going to look at the median salary of the alumni from each school, as well as the school's ranking on the Forbes list of top colleges. Okay, that's meaty stuff, numerical data that you can compare that supports a specific winner. So my cautionary note to you is don't have any criteria points where you don't have a clear explanation of the data that you're going to compare to determine a winner, okay? I'm not going to go through this in great detail because you can read this report on your own to get an idea of what I'm talking about. Right now, I'm talking about the structure. So your introduction section is going to have the purpose of the report, your overview of your criteria, your overview of your 3 schools, and this is just short, quick history about the schools. Okay, and then overview of what master's program you are evaluating. Okay. Now, the other thing I want to bring your attention to is you'll see, for example, when they're talking about the schools, anytime you're writing information in your report that has detailed facts, figures, historical references, data, etc., it's not what I call walk around opinion-based knowledge. You got this information from a source. If you got that information from a source, you got to cite that source. So here's how you do that. Here are the students talking about a University of Nebraska, and they're telling us about what they specialize in. And at the end, we see parentheses, University of Nebraska dash Lincoln, parentheses. That's what we call an in-text parenthetical citation. And I'll marry that up with the works cited in a second. Same for University of Missouri. We're talking about when they were founded, membership, awards, and what do we see at the end? Parentheses, about Mizzou, University of Missouri. The biggest mistake you can make in a research paper is not citing your sources. So when in doubt, cite the source. But you're thinking, well, my report's going to have all kinds of citations in it because I'm grabbing information from all over the place, and that's the majority of my report. That's correct. That's what a research paper is. So I expect to see lots of parenthetical citations in your report. So the way I check to make sure that you've cited all your sources is, first I'm going to look at your works cited. As I thumb through your report, I'm going to look at your works cited. And I see this student, it's got a fair number of research. So pardon me while I get our view. There's close to 20 sources here. You don't need to have, well, maybe not 20, but certainly over 15. You don't need to have this many sources, but a works cited is A to Z in its order. And EasyBib will set it up for you. There's a hierarchy to how the source is displayed. But remember that discussion the student had about the University of Missouri. I'm going to look for it here, okay? The way your source shows on your works cited is exactly how it should show in your parenthetical citation. So it's usually the name of the article, the online article that you found the information from. So here I see University of Missouri. So as I'm reading your report, anytime that I'm going to look for a source at the end, about Missouri, about Mizzou, University of Missouri. I'm going to scroll down to the student's works cited, about Mizzou, University of Mizzou. Check, I'm going to check that off. Every source that is on your works cited page needs to show up cited somewhere in your paper. That's why it's called a works cited, okay? So conversely, if it's on your works cited, it needs to show up in your paper. If it's in your paper, it needs to be on the works cited. So make sure you're doing your citations. I provided you with some good tutorials on how to do citations. Those are in your week 6 and also on the resource page for the report. All right, so we're ticking along. We've done the introduction section, the report, purpose of report, overview of criteria, overview of schools, overview of a master's. What is a master's of science designation? Okay, that's what it is, and that's where they found that information. Okay, that's good. So that's setting the table. Then we move into the analysis by criteria section. This is the meat of your report. This is where you're doing your comparison, and it's very linear in how you write this main section. So for example, our first criteria with this student's paper is cost. The flow of your criteria analysis sections, as you do each criteria point, it should include the following. First, you're going to have the header, criteria 1, name the criteria point, cost. Second, you're going to have an introductory paragraph that explains the data that you're going to evaluate to determine who wins. The student does that here. I will analyze blankety blank, and the winner will be, it says so it's the school that offers the most cost-effective program will win this criteria point. So there's my introduction from the student. Introductory paragraph, what I'm going to evaluate and how they win. Then it's the graph itself. The graph, the embedded graph, has 4 components. Those 4 components are, number 1, a title. Number 2, the graphic itself. Number three, a figure. And number 4, the source. Those can be kind of, the figure and the title can be in a different order, but typically it goes figure. Your first time you show a graphic, it's like a pointer. You'll say, as shown below in figure 1. And the next time you have a graphic, as shown below in figure 2. So title, figure, or figure 1, title, graphic, and then the source. So every one of those will have that. You can see the graphic doesn't take up the whole page. It's embedded in the page. It's about 1/3 of the page roughly. Okay. Then, so there's the introductory paragraph, then there's the graphic, and then there's a recap paragraph afterwards that provides some additional information about why a certain school won that criteria point. So here they don't restate the numbers. Don't restate the numbers in your paragraph. It's already there in your graph. But here the student is saying the application fee is equivalent to that of University of Missouri, marginally higher, tuition and costs are less. Kansas State evidently offers the most cost-effective master's program and therefore wins the criteria point. Boom. Okay? So your summary paragraph just reiterates who won and why. Don't restate the numbers that are in the graph. And they got some source in there. Your next criteria point, convenience. Again, intro paragraph, the graphic itself, which has figure, title, graphic, and source. They did the source down here in a footnoted MLA format. And then the next one. So they don't have to each occupy a page. This student had 1 page per criteria point. That's fine. But what you see is easy to read, different colors. You're submitting these digitally, so it doesn't cost you to print anything. So use colors to separate your schools. Accessibility. By the time I finish reading your, here I am on criteria 5, caliber. By the time I finish reading your criteria analysis, it should be pretty clear to me who's probably the winner. Your recommended school does not need to win each criteria point, but overall it'll score the highest. All right, so we've gone through 2 of the 4 main headings of the report. We went through the introduction section. We went through the criteria analysis section. The third main section is your recommendation. So this is actually another graph. Title, graphic, figure, source. This is a nice way to sum up your report. And this comparative table will also help you when you deliver your presentation recording of your report findings. Here you see the student has just scored how many points each school won on the different criteria points. So it's a nice scorecard feature. And you can see that Kansas State won the most criteria points. So that's a nice final touch. Your final recommendation will have that summary piece. You can use a graphic, a table to do that, a scorecard, if you will, and a final recommendation. So here's their final statement. Kansas State won 3 of the 5. So here in the body of the report, we've got a whole page dedicated to the final recommendation. On the executive summary, way back here, we've boiled it down to just a really short couple of sentences, okay? So executive summary, think boiled down, distilled, concise, snapshot, top line version of the entire report itself. That's the final recommendation. That's our third of our 4 main heading areas. And our 4th main area is the works cited, which you've already kind of done, okay? So that's it. So I would follow this sample. You're going to be using your own schools, your own information. Do not collaborate with other students. Now, you might have a school that's similar to another student, that's fine, but if I'm going to be honest with you, I do plagiarism searches. So if I'm finding similarity of content between 2 students, I will give both of you a 0, and then we'll have to have a conversation about who copied from whom. So just do your own work, and let's avoid those headaches and drama. Okay. Wow, that's a lot I covered. But that summarizes how to put together your analytical report. So focus on that sample right here. Don't delay. It really won't take you that long to write. But once you write the report, you'll be in good standing to do the recording of your report findings. And that piece, I'll cover that. All right. Good luck. Don't delay. Reach out if you have questions. Again, the analytical report, final version, is due Sunday, August 2nd. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.